I'll just use my rent money, I thought. By morning, I was living in my car. My name is Thomas. I deal blackjack for a living. I know every trick, every angle, every way people lose their shirts. 3 years watching fools chase losses, and I thought I was different. I had $800, exactly what I needed for rent. My girlfriend had just moved out. My car had died. Bills were stacking like bad hands. But I wasn't some desperate gambler. I was a professional. I understood the math. I'd play smart, win what I needed, walk away clean. The first hour went perfect. I was up 200, feeling like a genius. Then the cards turned cold. My discipline cracked. My plan shattered. 6 hours later, I sat in my Honda watching the sun come up over an empty parking lot, holding nothing but regret and a maxed-out credit card. When someone who knows all the odds still loses everything, what's really being gambled? The money or the lie we tell ourselves about control? My name is Thomas Hensley, and 3 years ago, I thought I had gambling figured out. I dealt blackjack at the Riverside Casino, night shift, Tuesday through Saturday. I knew the house edge on every game by heart. I could spot a card counter from across the room. I watched people lose their rent money, their car payments, their kids' college funds, and I felt sorry for them. I really did. But I also felt superior. Tuesday nights were always slow in the main pit. But this particular Tuesday in March, Janet called me up to the high-limit room. The VIP area had burgundy carpet instead of blue, cocktail waitresses in black dresses instead of red, and table minimums that made my monthly salary look like tip money. I straightened my bow tie and walked through the frosted glass doors like I belonged. There, the first player I saw was a guy in his 50s wearing a Rolex that caught the light every time he reached for his chips. Real estate developer from Phoenix, according to his player's card. He was betting $500 a hand like it was pocket change. Next to him sat Mrs. Rodriguez, a regular who owned 3 restaurants downtown. She played 2 hands at once, methodical and quiet, her wedding ring clicking against her chips that I shuffled the cards with the smooth rhythm I'd perfected over 3 years. Snap, rifle, bridge, strip. The developer got a 20. Mrs. Rodriguez got 19 on one hand, 16 on the other. I flipped my whole card. 21. House wins, I announced, sweeping their chips into the rack. The developer shrugged and pushed out another $500 bet. Mrs. Rodriguez adjusted her reading glasses and did the same. $1,500 lost in 30 seconds, and they acted like I'd just told them it was cloudy outside that I dealt another round. Then another. By the time my first break rolled around at midnight, the developer was down $8,000. $8,000. That was more than I made in 3 months, and he was drinking his whiskey like it was water, asking me about the weather in the employee break room. I sat with my turkey sandwich and did some math on a napkin. My rent was due Friday. $425, my half since Sarah moved out. My savings account had $63 in it. My checking had exactly what I needed for rent, plus maybe $20 for gas. My credit cards were maxed from the transmission repair on my Honda. But that guy just lost $8,000 without blinking. I finished my sandwich and walked back to the table. The developer was still there, still losing. Mrs. Rodriguez had switched to Diet Coke, but kept playing her methodical 2-hand system. A new player had joined them, a construction contractor named Marcus who introduced himself by tipping me $20 on his first winning hand. Marcus was different from the others. He talked strategy, asked smart questions, set limits for himself. He'd started with $500 and built it up to $1,200 by playing tight, disciplined blackjack. Basic strategy with perfect execution. Card counting wasn't allowed, but Marcus was doing everything else right. The key, he told me during a shuffle, is knowing when to walk away. Win or lose, you set your number and stick to it. I nodded like I was just being polite, but I was listening. Marcus played for 2 more hours and cashed out with $3,200. He tipped me $50 and shook my hand. Good dealing, Thomas. See you next time. The developer, meanwhile, had lost $14,000 total. He signed his marker with a gold pin and walked toward the elevator like he was heading to a business meeting. My shift ended at 6 in the morning. I cleaned my table, counted down my rack, and signed out with Janet. She handed me my tips for the night, $180, the best Tuesday I'd ever had. Walking through the main casino floor toward the employee exit, I felt the weight of those bills in my pocket. The early morning crowd was thin. A few insomniacs at the penny slots, some coffee drinkers at the video poker bar. The whole place had a different energy at dawn, quieter, more intimate. Like it was holding secrets. I passed the ATM near the lobby and slowed down. There was a crumpled receipt on the floor showing someone's checking account balance, $12,847.63. I picked it up and threw it away, but the number stuck in my head. $12,000, just sitting in someone's checking account. I thought about Marcus and his disciplined approach. I thought about the developer's casual losses. I thought about my own 3 years of experience, my perfect knowledge of basic strategy, my professional understanding of how the games really worked. Then I thought about my rent, due in 3 days, and the empty feeling in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. My phone buzzed with a text from Eddie at the auto shop. Your car's ready. Transmission looks good. Come by any time. Martinez Auto Repair sat on a corner lot next to a laundromat and a taco truck. I pulled into the gravel driveway at 10:30, my Honda making the grinding noise that had gotten progressively worse over the past month. Eddie Martinez came out wiping his hands on a red shop rag, his face wearing the expression mechanics get when they're about to deliver expensive news. Morning, Thomas. Got your estimate ready. We walked into the small office that smelled like motor oil and coffee. Eddie pulled a clipboard from behind the counter and handed it to me. The number at the bottom made my chest tight. $1,847.50. The transmission's shot, Eddie said. Can't rebuild it. Needs a complete replacement. That includes labor, fluids, new filter. I can get you a remanufactured unit for a little less, but honestly, with the miles on your car, I'd go with the new one. I stared at the estimate. $1,800 might as well have been $18,000. What if I don't fix it? You might get another week, maybe 2. But it's going to fail completely, and when it does, you'll be stranded. Could happen anywhere, on the highway, in a parking lot, middle of the night. I needed the car for work. The casino was 12 miles from my apartment, and there was no bus route that ran at 6 in the morning. Can I pay you in installments? Eddie considered this. I could do 4 payments of $450 each. First payment due today, then weekly after that. But I'll need to hold the car until it's paid off. $450. I had exactly $425 in my checking account for rent, plus the $63 in savings. Even with my tips from last night, I was nowhere close. Let me think about it, I said. Take your time, but don't drive it too much. When that transmission goes, it goes fast. The drive home was a symphony of grinding gears and delayed engagement. Every red light made me nervous. Every hill felt like a challenge the car might not accept. I parked in front of my apartment complex and sat there for a minute, listening to the engine tick as it cooled down. My apartment was on the 2nd floor of a brown stucco building that had been updated sometime in the 90s. The carpet was beige, the walls were beige, and the kitchen appliances were that specific shade of white that looks beige in certain light. It was cheap, but it was mine. Or it had been mine and Sarah's. I climbed the stairs and heard voices through my door. Sarah's voice and her sister Kim's. I knocked before using my key. It's me. I called out. Sarah opened the door. She was wearing the NYU sweatshirt I'd bought her for Christmas, her dark hair pulled back in the messy bun she wore when she was stressed. Behind her, I could see cardboard boxes on the kitchen counter. Hey, she said. I'm just getting the rest of my kitchen stuff. I didn't know you were coming by. I texted you yesterday. She showed me her phone. Sure enough, there was a message I'd missed while dealing cards. Coming by Tuesday around 10 to get boxes. Kim waved from the kitchen. She looked like Sarah, but with shorter hair and a permanent expression of mild disapproval, especially when it came to me. Hi, Thomas. Take whatever you need, I said. Sarah was packing her coffee maker, the good knife set her parents had given us, the ceramic bowls we'd bought together at Target. Each item going into a box felt like a small subtraction from what used to be our life. How's the car situation? She asked. Expensive. I'm sorry. I know the timing sucks with me moving out and everything. It's not your fault. She paused, holding a wooden spoon. I left my half of next month's rent on the counter. $425. I looked over at the kitchen island. There was an envelope with rent written in Sarah's careful handwriting. $425 in cash. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I said I'd pay through March, and I meant it. Kim emerged from the bedroom, carrying a lamp. We should get going. The U-Haul's only rented until 3. Sarah looked around the apartment one more time. At the couch, where we used to watch movies. At the dining table where we'd eaten probably 1,000 meals together. At the empty spots on the walls where her pictures used to hang. This is weird, she said quietly. Yeah, I'll get the rest of my stuff on Saturday. Just some clothes and books. I nodded. I'll be at work, but you still have your key. She hugged me then, quick and tight. She smelled like the vanilla lotion she always wore. For a second, it felt like maybe we could figure this out. Maybe the last 6 months of growing apart could be fixed somehow. Take care of yourself. Thomas. You too. They carried the last boxes downstairs. I watched from the window as they loaded the U-Haul. Sarah got in the passenger seat, and Kim started the engine. They pulled away without looking back. The apartment felt enormous and empty. Sarah's rent money sat on the counter like an accusation. She'd kept her word about paying through March, even though we'd broken up 2 weeks ago. Even though she was starting over in her sister's spare bedroom. Even though I was the one who'd let work and money stress turn into arguments that never seemed to end. I picked up the envelope and counted the bills. 21 20s and 1 5. Her half of the rent she no longer owed. For an apartment she no longer lived in. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mr. Hensley? This is David Chun, your landlord. I wanted to follow up about next month's rent. It's due Friday, and I haven't received it yet. My stomach dropped. Right? Yes, sir. I'm actually dealing with a situation. My girlfriend moved out and, I see. Will you be able to make the payment on time? I looked at Sarah's envelope, then at the car repair estimate on my coffee table. I might need a small extension. Just a few days. There was a pause. Mr. Hensley, you've been a good tenant for 2 years. And I appreciate what you did for my nephew, helping him get that job at the casino. But I can't make a habit of extensions. I understand. It's just temporary. I have most of it. How much is most? I did the math quickly. Sarah's $425 plus my $425 minus what I needed for my half. I'm short about $400. Another pause. I can give you until next Friday. 1 week. But after that, I'll have to start eviction proceedings. That's fair. Thank you, Mr. Chun. 1 week, Mr. Hensley. The line went dead. I sat on my couch in the too quiet apartment and looked at the envelope of cash. Sarah's money could cover my rent shortfall, but that felt like stealing from someone who'd already done more than she had to. I needed $400 in 7 days. My next paycheck wouldn't come until the following Wednesday. I could try calling my sister Rebecca, but I still owed her $300 from last month's crisis. Outside, I could hear the taco truck's radio playing mariachi music. Someone was mowing grass. Normal sounds of a normal Tuesday morning in a normal life that was quietly falling apart. My phone buzzed with another text from Eddie. Just checking. Do you want to move forward with the transmission repair? I can start on it this afternoon, if you're ready. I stared at the message for a long time before turning the phone. Face down on the coffee table. I spread my bills across the kitchen table like I was dealing cards. Electric bill, $67. Phone, $85. Credit card minimums, $340 total. Gas and groceries, maybe $150 if I was careful. Car insurance, $94. And now rent, $850, half of which I didn't have. The calculator on my phone confirmed what I already knew. Even with Sarah's money covering her share, I was $425 short on rent. Plus, I needed $1,800 for the transmission. Over $2,000 that might as well have been on the moon. My savings account balance stared back at me from my banking app, $63.47. I'd been proud of that account once. 2 years ago, it had almost hit $3,000. But then there was the emergency room visit when I thought I was having a heart attack. Turned out to be a panic attack, but the bill was real enough. Then Sarah's birthday trip to San Francisco. Then the time my hours got cut during the summer when business was slowed. I opened my laptop and checked my credit card accounts. Capital One, $2,847 balance on a $3,000 limit. Chase, $1,923 balance on a $2,000 limit. Discover, $1,651 balance on a $1,800 limit. The transmission repair had maxed out the Chase card, and the others were close behind. I could call Rebecca. My sister lived in Phoenix, worked as a nurse, made decent money. She'd helped me out before when I was between jobs right after high school. But last month, when I'd asked for $300 to cover my car insurance, she'd gotten that tone in her voice. Not mean, just tired. Thomas, I love you. But this is becoming a pattern. It's not a pattern. It's just bad luck. Bad luck doesn't last 2 years. She'd given me the money anyway, but I could hear the disappointment. The same disappointment I'd heard from Mom before she died, and from Dad before he stopped returning my calls that I dialed Rebecca's number anyway. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's Becca. Leave a message and I'll call you back." "Hey, it's me. Nothing urgent, just wanted to talk. Call me when you get a chance." I hung up and immediately felt pathetic. Nothing urgent. Right. Like my life wasn't quietly collapsing in slow motion. The apartment felt too small and too big at the same time. Too small because Sarah's empty spaces made the walls feel closer. Too big because it was more space than I could afford alone. I walked from room to room, cataloging things I could sell. The TV Sarah and I had bought together, but she'd left it for me, so maybe I could get $200 for it. My Xbox from college, maybe $50. The dining table we'd found at an estate sale, probably worth less than we'd paid for it. Even if I sold everything, I might scrape together $300 or $400. Enough to buy me another week or two, but not enough to solve the real problem that I made a sandwich with the last of the turkey and sat on the couch. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the courtyard, their voices carrying through the thin walls. Normal sounds of people living normal lives where rent got paid on time and cars didn't need $1,800 repairs. That MY laptop was still open to my banking website. I clicked through to my checking account and stared at the balance. $847.63. Rent money. Sacred money. The one account I never touched except for the most essential expenses. But $800 wasn't that much, really. At the casino, I saw people lose more than that in 20 minutes. Just last week, a guy in his 30s had lost $1,500 on blackjack and walked away laughing. Yesterday, the developer from Phoenix had dropped $8,000 like it was nothing. I thought about Marcus, the construction contractor who'd won $3,200 by playing smart. He'd started with $500 and more than doubled it in one night. He'd played perfect basic strategy, set limits for himself, walked away when he was ahead. I knew basic strategy better than Marcus did. I knew it perfectly. I'd been dealing cards for 3 years, watching players make mistakes, seeing the mathematical certainty of the house edge play out hand after hand. But I also knew which players occasionally won and why. The smart ones played tight. They managed their money. They set goals and stuck to them. They treated gambling like a business transaction, not an emotional release. What if I could turn 800 into 1600? Just double it, using perfect strategy and professional discipline. That would cover rent and leave me some breathing room. If I could get to 2000, I might even be able to handle the car repair. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The taco truck was still there, its speaker playing the same mariachi songs on repeat. A couple was ordering lunch, laughing about something, holding hands while they waited for their food. They looked young and broke and happy. I used to feel like that. Before the bills started piling up, before Sarah got tired of watching me stress about money, before every conversation turned into a negotiation about what we could and couldn't afford. That MY phone buzzed. Text from Janet. Need you to come in early Thursday if possible. Sandra called in sick and we're short-staffed. Extra hours if you want them. Extra hours meant extra money, but probably only an additional $50 or $60. Not enough to matter. Not enough to change anything. I typed back. Sure, what time? Can you be here by 4? I'll put you in the high-limit room again. Good tips up there. The high-limit room, where Marcus had won $3,200 by playing smart, where the developer had lost $8,000 without caring, where money moved like water, and the players who understood the game sometimes walked away winners. Sounds good. See you at 4. I set the phone down and looked at the envelope of Sarah's rent money on the counter. $425 that could cover my shortfall, but would make me the kind of person who takes money from someone who'd already done enough. Or I could find another way. A smarter way. A way that used the skills and knowledge I'd spent 3 years developing. MY laptop was still warm when I opened it back up. I navigated to a blackjack strategy website and spent the next hour reviewing basic strategy charts I'd memorized years ago. Hit on 16 versus a 10. Stand on 17 or higher. Double down on 11. Split aces and eights. Simple rules that, when followed perfectly, reduced the house edge to less than 0.5%. With perfect play and good money management, it was possible to win. Not guaranteed, but possible. And possibility For the first time in weeks, felt like enough. Thursday came faster than I wanted. I ironed my dealer's shirt with extra care, checking the collar and cuffs twice. The high-limit room required a certain level of presentation. Players betting thousands of dollars expected their dealers to look professional. I practiced shuffling at my kitchen table, muscle memory taking over as the cards flowed through my hands. Snap, rifle, bridge, strip. Perfect every time. I stopped at the 7-Eleven on my way to work for energy drinks and gas station coffee. At the counter, a guy in paint-splattered jeans was scratching lottery tickets with a quarter. He had 5 tickets spread out, methodical as a surgeon. Come on, come on, he muttered under his breath. The 3rd ticket hit. Not the jackpot, but $500. The man hooped and showed the ticket to the clerk. 500. I told you this was my lucky day. He bought 10 more tickets with his winnings. The clerk ran them through the machine without expression. He'd seen this dance before. I paid for my Red Bull and left while the man was still scratching, already down 200 of his winnings. But $500. Just like that. Random chance paying out enough to cover most of my rent shortage. The casino parking lot was fuller than usual for a Thursday evening. Inside, the main floor hummed with activity. March Madness was in full swing, and the sportsbook was packed with college basketball fans making bracket bets. I checked in with security and headed to the employee break room to change my shirt. Janet was waiting by the time clock with a clipboard. Thomas, perfect. The VIP room's already busy tonight. We've got some serious players up there, couple of regulars plus some out-of-town money. Table limits are $50 to $5,000. $5,000 maximum bets. I'd dealt to high rollers before, but those numbers still made my chest tight. One hand could equal 3 months of my salary. Any particular players I should know about? Table 12 has a group celebrating some kind of business deal. They've been buying rounds for the whole room. Table 14 has Mrs. Chun. You know her, plays every Thursday, very methodical. And we've got a new player at table 10, some tech guy from Seattle. He's been asking about card counting rules. I nodded and clipped my bow tie. The high-limit room felt different when you walked in as staff versus when you imagined walking in as a player. The burgundy carpet was thicker, the lighting softer. The whole atmosphere designed to make large amounts of money feel comfortable changing hands. The Seattle tech guy turned out to be younger than me. Maybe 25, wearing a Microsoft hoodie and jeans. He had $10,000 in chips stacked neatly in front of him and was playing perfect basic strategy with the focus of someone solving a math problem. Evening, I said, shuffling the cards. Welcome to Riverside. Thanks. Quick question. What's your policy on card counting? As long as you're not using devices or working with partners, you're welcome to use any mental strategies you want. We just ask that you keep the game moving at a reasonable pace. He smiled. Perfect. I've been practicing basic strategy for 6 months. Time to see if it works in the real world. Over the next 2 hours, I watched him systematically win $1,200. He never deviated from basic strategy, never made emotional decisions, never chased losses because he never had any significant losses to chase. When he reached 13,000 total, he colored up his chips and walked away. Thanks for the fair dealing, he said, tipping me $50. Maybe I'll see you next time I'm in town. I watched him leave and felt something shift in my chest. He'd turned 10,000 into 13,000 using nothing but knowledge and discipline. The same knowledge I had. The same discipline I could have. During my break, I sat in the employee cafeteria and did math on a napkin. If I started with $800 and played perfect basic strategy like the tech guy, what could I reasonably expect to win? Conservative estimates suggested I could double my money in a good session. Maybe more if I caught the right cards. 800 could become 1,600. 1,600 could solve my rent problem and give me breathing room for the car repair. The second half of my shift passed in a blur of cards and chips and calculations. When I signed out at 6 a.m., my tip envelope held $140. Another good night in the VIP room. Walking through the casino toward the exit, I noticed how different everything looked at dawn. Quieter, more intimate. The desperate late-night crowd had gone home, leaving only serious players and insomniacs. The lighting felt softer, the sounds more muted. I passed the ATM near the lobby and slowed down. My reflection stared back from the black screen, bow tie loose, hair slightly messed from 8 hours of dealing cards. Behind me, a few early morning players were scattered across the main floor. An older woman at the video poker machines, feeding $5 bills into the slot with mechanical precision. Two men at a blackjack table, probably finishing a long night that had started as a quick drink after work. I thought about the tech guy's methodical approach, his calm confidence, his willingness to walk away when he hit his target. That my phone showed 6:23 a.m. Most of the world was sleeping, but the casino never slept. Money never slept. Opportunity never slept. I pulled out my wallet and checked my cash. 140 in tips, plus the 20 I'd started with. Not enough to matter. But upstairs in my checking account was $847 that could become something more. The ATM screen lit up when I inserted my card. I stared at the ATM screen for a full minute before entering my PIN. The familiar interface asked what I wanted to do. Check balance. Withdrawal. Deposit. Transfer. My checking account balance appeared. $847.63. Rent money. Sacred money. Money that represented the difference between having a home and not having one. But it was also potential energy. $800 that could become $1,600 with the right application of skill and knowledge. The tech guy had just proven it was possible. Marcus had done the same thing earlier in the week. I selected withdrawal and chose other amount. The keypad glowed under the fluorescent lights. I typed $844, leaving just enough for the $3 ATM fee. The machine counted out 42 $20 bills with mechanical precision. I folded them carefully and put them in my wallet, feeling the weight of possibility and terror in equal measure. The casino floor at 6:30 a.m. had a different energy than during my working hours. Softer lighting, fewer people, a sense of intimacy that made large decisions feel more private. I walked past the main blackjack pit toward the lower limit tables, where minimum bets started at $5. Table 7 was open with a friendly-looking dealer named Maria, someone I'd seen in the break room but never worked closely with. She smiled as I approached. "Morning, Thomas. Taking a break from dealing to try the other side." Something like that. I sat down and placed a 20 on the felt. "Change, please." Maria converted my 20 into four $5 chips. Red chips, the color of beginners and casual players. I'd been handling black chips worth $100 each all night. But these small red discs felt enormous in my hands. "Good luck," Maria said, shuffling the cards. The first hand was nerve-wracking and anticlimactic at the same time. I bet $5 and got dealt ace-7 versus her 6. Soft 18 against a bust card. Basic strategy said to stand, so I stood. Maria flipped a 10 for 16, then drew a king and busted. I won $5. My first win as a player instead of a dealer. The second hand went just as smoothly. King-queen versus her 4. I stood on 20. She busted again with 23. Another $5 win. Within 30 minutes, I was up $40. The cards were cooperating, basic strategy was working exactly as it should, and my initial nervousness had settled into focused concentration. This wasn't emotional gambling. This was applied mathematics. Other players drifted in and out. A construction worker finishing a graveyard shift, playing loose and losing steadily. An elderly man who asked Maria for advice on every hand, ignoring basic strategy in favor of hunches. I watched them make obvious mistakes and felt the same superiority I'd felt as a dealer, but I was different. I knew what I was doing. By 7:15, I was up $80. My original 20 had become 100, and my confidence was building with every correct decision. When Maria took her break and was replaced by a dealer I didn't recognize, I colored up to green $25 chips. The new dealer was mechanical and efficient. No small talk, no personality, just cards and mathematics. Perfect for what I was trying to accomplish. I increased my bets to $25 per hand. Still conservative, still well within proper bankroll management, but large enough to build my winnings more quickly. The strategy continued to work. King Jack versus Dealer 7. I stood and won. Ace 5 versus Dealer 10. I hit and drew a 5 for 20-1. An hour later, I was up $160. I'd turned my original $20 buy-in into $180, using nothing but knowledge and discipline. During a shuffle break, I stepped away from the table and walked to the men's room. In the mirror, I looked like someone who was winning. Confident, focused, in control. Not desperate or emotional or reckless. Back at the table, I increased my bets to $50 per hand. The jump felt significant, but I was playing with house money now. My original stake was already recouped, plus a substantial profit. The cards stayed friendly. Not dramatically so. I wasn't hitting miraculous 21s or watching the dealer bust every hand. Just good, solid basic strategy results. The mathematical edge playing out over time, exactly as it was supposed to. By 8:30, I was up $260. My small experiment had become a genuine success story. I was proving to myself that knowledgeable, disciplined play could produce consistent results. But $260, while encouraging, wasn't enough to solve my real problems. I needed more like $400 to cover my rent shortage, plus ideally some extra cushion for the car repair that I colored up to black $100 chips and moved to a table with higher limits. The minimum bet jumped to $25, but the maximum went up to $500. Room to grow if the cards continued cooperating. The new table had two other players. A businessman in an expensive suit who was betting hundreds per hand with the casual air of someone for whom money wasn't a real concern, and a woman about my age who was playing tight. Methodical basic strategy similar to mine. I started with $50 bets. Twice what I'd been playing before, but still conservative given my current bankroll. The cards continued their friendly pattern. Blackjack on my third hand paid $75 instantly. By 9 a.m. I was up $420. Almost exactly what I needed for rent. I stared at my chips and felt a moment of perfect clarity. I'd done it. I'd used professional knowledge and disciplined play to solve my financial crisis. All I needed to do now was color up, walk away, and deposit the money in my checking account. But $420 only solved one problem. I still owed Rebecca $300, still needed $1,800 for the transmission, still had maxed out credit cards and mounting bills. What if I could get $800? Or $1,000? What if this one session could solve everything? I pushed out a $100 bet and waited for the cards. The $100 bet felt different in my hands. Heavier. More significant. I'd crossed some invisible line from small stakes experimentation to serious gambling. But I told myself it was still controlled, still professional. The dealer gave me 10-6 versus her 9. 16 against 9, one of the worst hands in blackjack. Basic strategy said to hit, even though it felt dangerous. I tapped the table. 7 of hearts. 23. Bust. My first real loss of the session. $100 gone in 15 seconds. I took a breath and reminded myself that variance was normal. You couldn't win every hand. The goal was to win more than you lost over time, and one loss didn't change the mathematical reality. Next hand. Another $100 bet. Queen Jack versus dealer 6. Perfect 20 against a bust card. The dealer flipped a 10 for 16, then drew a queen for 26. Another win. I was back to even on the $100 level, my total winnings still around $450. The temporary loss had been just that, temporary. The businessman next to me was playing much larger amounts with less knowledge. He split 10s against a dealer 8, a basic strategy mistake that made me wince. Both hands lost, costing him $400. Brutal, he said, signaling for another drink. But that's why they call it gambling, right? I wanted to tell him it didn't have to be gambling. With proper strategy, it could be something closer to a business investment. But I just nodded and focused on my own play. For the next hour, I maintained $100 bets and continued winning more than I lost. Not dramatically. I'd win 2 hands, lose 1, win 1, lose 2. But the overall trend was upward. By 10:15, I was up $630. $630. More than enough for rent, with extra for bills and breathing room. I could walk away right now and solve my immediate crisis with money to spare, but I was playing well, really well. The cards were cooperating, my strategy was flawless, and I felt more confident than I had in months. What if I could push it to 1,000? What if I could actually get ahead for the first time in years? I increased my bets to $150 per hand. Still conservative relative to my current bankroll, but large enough to build winnings more quickly. The first few hands at the higher level went perfectly. Blackjack, 20 against dealer bust. Double down on 11 that hit for 21. Within 20 minutes, I was up over $800. $800. My original rent money had doubled. I was looking at $1,647 total. Enough to cover rent, make a serious dent in the car repair, and maybe even pay Rebecca back. But $1,800 would cover the transmission completely. and 2,000 would give me the kind of financial cushion I hadn't had in years that I pushed my luck and increased to $200 bets. The cards turned cold. Not dramatically at first. I lost a hand, won one, lost two more. Variance, I told myself. Temporary bad luck that would correct itself over time. But the correction didn't come. Over the next 30 minutes, I lost more hands than I won. Not because of bad strategy. I was still playing perfect basic strategy. Just because cards don't follow neat mathematical patterns in the short term. By 11 a.m., my winnings had dropped from $800 to $450. Still a good session, still enough to cover rent. But the momentum had shifted, and I could feel my confidence wavering. The smart move was to walk away. I'd proven my point, won enough to solve my immediate problem, demonstrated that skilled play could overcome the house edge. Instead, I increased my bets to $250 per hand. The logic felt sound at the time. If I was going to experience variance anyway, better to push through it at higher stakes and recover my losses more quickly. A few good hands at the higher level would put me back where I'd been. King-Queen versus dealer ace. She checked for blackjack and didn't have it. I stood on 20 and watched her flip over 21. $250 gone. Next hand, Jack 7 versus dealer 8. I stood on 17 and lost to her 19. Another $250 gone. I was down to $400 in winnings, and panic was starting to creep into my calculations. This was supposed to be controlled. Professional. A business transaction using superior knowledge. But I was chasing losses, increasing bets to recover money that had never really been mine to begin with. I was becoming every player I'd ever pitted as a dealer. The woman playing basic strategy had been watching my session with growing concern. Maybe take a break, she suggested quietly during a shuffle. Walk around, get some coffee? I thanked her for the advice, but ignored it. I was too close to walking away empty-handed after having been up so much to at 11:30. I was down to $150 in total winnings. My rent-solving session had become a desperate attempt to avoid losing everything. I'd worked for it and I pushed out a $300 bet, larger than any bet I'd ever made in my life. The dealer gave me 9-7 versus her 10-16 against 10. Basic strategy said to hit. I hesitated. $300 hung in the balance. My rent money, my car repair money, everything. Sir, the dealer asked. I tapped the table for a hit. 5 of clubs. 21. I'd won. $450 on one hand, bringing my total winnings back to $600. Relief flooded through me like cold water. That should have been the moment I walked away. I'd recovered from my losses, proven I could handle the variance, and had enough money to solve my problems. Instead, I looked at the time, 11:45 a.m., and calculated how much I could win if I kept playing at this level for another hour. The $300 win felt like vindication. I'd been down to almost nothing and clawed my way back through skill and nerve. The woman at the table nodded approvingly when I hit 21, and even the businessman paused his own losing streak to congratulate me. Nice hand, he said. Takes guts to hit 16 against a 10 with that much money out there. But it hadn't been guts. It had been mathematics. Basic strategy dictated the hit, and basic strategy had proven correct. That's what separated me from recreational gamblers. I made decisions based on probability, not emotion. I consolidated my chips and counted my total winnings. $612. Enough for rent with money left over. The smart play was to color up and walk away victorious. Instead, I stayed in my seat and pushed out another $300 bet. The cards had been cold for the past hour, which meant they were due to turn warm again. That's not how probability actually works. Each hand is independent of the last. But sitting there with $600 in front of me, it felt like mathematical certainty. Queen Jack versus dealer 7. 20 against a middle card. Basic strategy said to stand, so I stood. The dealer flipped a 10 for 17, then drew a 4 for 21. $300 gone. Just like that, I was back down to 300 in winnings, and the familiar tightness returned to my chest. This was supposed to be controlled gambling, not an emotional roller coaster. But watching $300 disappear in one hand triggered something deeper than logic. Next hand, another $300 bet. I was committed now to playing at this level until I either reached my target or lost everything. No more conservative bets, no more gradual building. Time to decide whether I was going to solve my problems or not. A6 versus dealer 9. Soft 17 against a strong card. Basic strategy said to hit, so I hit point 3 of diamonds. Soft 20, a strong hand that would win unless the dealer had 20 or 21. The dealer flipped a jack for 19. I won $600 in winnings again. The same place I'd been 20 minutes earlier, but it felt different this time. More precarious. Like I was balancing on a tightrope that got thinner with each step. I should have walked away then. I should have colored up, cashed out, and gone home to count my money like a sensible person. But the pattern was becoming clear to me. I could control this. I could manage the variance through proper betting and perfect strategy. What I needed was one more big win to push me over the $1,000 mark. One hand that would give me enough money to solve multiple problems instead of just one. I pushed out $400. The biggest bet of my life. The dealer looked at me with the neutral expression they're trained to maintain, but I caught a flicker of concern in her eyes. $400 was serious money, even in the higher limit section. Good luck, sir. She dealt the cards. King of spades for me. Then a 5 of hearts. 15 total. Her up card was a queen. 15 against queen. One of the worst possible situations in blackjack. Basic strategy said to hit, but hitting meant risking a bust with $400 on the line. The businessman was watching now. The woman playing basic strategy was watching. Even a few people walking by had stopped to see what would happen with such a large bet. I looked at my cards again. King 5. 15 total. The king couldn't be split. The hand couldn't be doubled. My only options were to hit or stand, and standing on 15 against a queen was statistical suicide. Sir, the dealer asked again. I tapped the table. She dealt the hit card face up. 6 of clubs. 21. The relief was so intense I felt dizzy. $400 doubled to $800, bringing my total winnings to over $1,000. I'd done it. I'd reached the target that would solve not just my rent problem, but give me breathing room for other bills. The small crowd that had gathered applauded politely. The businessman raised his drink in a toast. Balls of steel, he said approvingly, but it hadn't been courage. It had been mathematics. Basic strategy had told me to hit, and basic strategy had been correct. That's what made this sustainable. I wasn't relying on luck or intuition. I was using proven mathematical principles to generate consistent results. I colored up my chips and walked away from the table with 10 black chips worth $100 each, plus assorted smaller denominations. $1,043 total. I in the casino bathroom. I counted the money twice to make sure. 21 50s, 3 20s, 2 10s, and 3 1s. More money than I'd ever held at one time in my life. But as I walked toward the cashier cage to convert the chips to cash, I passed the high-limit section where I'd been working just a few hours earlier. Table 12, where I'd dealt to the businessman who'd lost $8,000 without caring. Table 14, where Mrs. Chun played her methodical system every week. $1,000 was good money. Enough to solve my immediate crisis. But it wasn't life-changing money. It wouldn't pay off my credit cards or give me the kind of financial security I'd been chasing for years. What if I could turn 1,000 into 2,000? What if I could have one session that solved everything? I walked past the cashier cage and headed back toward the tables. The high-limit section felt different when I approached it as a player instead of a dealer. The burgundy carpet seemed thicker, the lighting more dramatic. The whole atmosphere designed to make large bets feel normal and reasonable. Table 12 was open with a dealer I didn't recognize, probably someone from the day shift I'd never worked with. The minimum bet was $50, maximum $5,000. Room to grow if things went well. I sat down and placed 5 black chips on the felt. $500. Half my winnings on a single hand, but I was playing with house money now. The original $800 from my checking account was theoretical at this point. What mattered was whether I could build on my success. Changing $500, the dealer announced to the pit boss. A routine security measure for large buy-ins that he gave me 10 orange chips worth $50 each, plus 5 green 25s. The orange chips felt substantial in my hands, more serious than the red 5s I'd started with 6 hours earlier. First hand, Jack 9 versus Dealer 6. 19 against a bust card. Basic strategy said to stand, which felt comfortable with such a strong hand. The dealer flipped a 10 for 16, then drew a king and busted with $26.50 won. My first hand in the high-limit section was a winner, which felt like a good omen. I settled into a rhythm of $50 bets, applying the same perfect basic strategy that had gotten me this far. The cards cooperated for the first 30 minutes. Not spectacular runs, just solid, winning blackjack. The mathematical edge playing out over time. By 1 p.m., I was up $300 at the higher limit, bringing my total winnings to over $1,300. More money than I'd ever won gambling. More money than I'd ever held as my own. But $1,300, while impressive, still wasn't enough to be truly transformative. It would solve my rent crisis and make a dent in other bills, but I'd still be living paycheck to paycheck, still vulnerable to the next emergency. What I needed was enough money to get ahead permanently. $2,000 would pay off a credit card completely. $3,000 would handle the car repair and give me a real emergency fund. I increased my bets to $100 per hand. The move felt natural rather than reckless. I was applying proper bankroll management, betting a reasonable percentage of my current winnings. The $100 level was where I'd been most successful during my earlier session. For 45 minutes, the strategy continued working. I won more hands than I lost, built my stack steadily, and felt the calm confidence that comes with playing correctly. By 2 p.m., I was up $500 at the higher limit point, $1,800 total. Enough to cover the transmission repair completely. I should have stopped then. Should have recognized that I'd achieved something remarkable and walked away with enough money to solve multiple problems. But $1,800 felt tantalizingly close to $2,000, and $2,000 felt like a round number that represented real financial security. I pushed out 2 orange chips. $100. The dealer gave me Ace 3 versus her King. Soft 14 against a strong card. Basic strategy said to hit, so I hit .7 of diamonds. Soft 21. Blackjack pays 3 to 2, so my $100 bet won me $150.1950 total. $50 away from my $2,000 target point. One more hand at the $100 level would put me over the top. One more correct application of basic strategy to reach a round number that would change everything. I pushed out another 100. The cards that came changed everything. But not in the way I'd expected. 9-8 versus dealer Ace. 17 against an Ace. The dealer checked for blackjack. No blackjack, she announced. Basic strategy said to stand on 17 against an Ace, even though it felt weak. I stood and watched the dealer flip over a 6 for 17. Push. Neither win nor loss. I was still at $1,950, still $50 short of my target. One more hand would do it. But as I reached for my chips to make another bet, something shifted in my peripheral vision. The pit boss was approaching the table, and behind him walked Janet, my supervisor, still in her work clothes from the night shift. "Thomas," she said, her voice carrying surprise and concern. "What are you doing here? Your shift ended 6 hours ago." I looked at my watch. It was 2:15 p.m. I'd been gambling for almost 8 hours straight. I started, then realized there was no good way to finish that sentence. Janet looked at the chips in front of me, then at the $100 bet still on the felt. Her expression shifted from surprise to understanding to disappointment. "Thomas, you need to color up and go home. Right now. I'm just finishing this hand." "No, you're not. You're cashing out and leaving. We can talk about this tomorrow, but right now you need to go." The pit boss was watching the conversation with professional interest. Other players at nearby tables were starting to notice. The whole situation was becoming a scene, exactly the kind of attention I didn't want. I picked up my chips without finishing the hand. $1,950 in various denominations, the most money I'd ever won. But it felt hollow walking away under Janet's disappointed gaze. The cashier cage. I converted the chips to cash and folded the bills into my wallet. 39 $50 bills, plus smaller denominations. Money that would solve my rent crisis, money that would fix my car, money that proved I could beat the casino at its own game. But walking through the parking lot toward my Honda, I felt more drained than victorious. 8 hours of intense concentration, emotional swings, and mathematical calculations had left me exhausted in a way that dealing cards for 8 hours never did. The Honda started on the second try, transmission grinding ominously as I pulled out of the parking lot. I had the money to fix it now, but fixing it felt like admitting the gambling session had been about necessity rather than skill. At home, I spread the cash across my kitchen table and counted it 3 times. $1,950. Enough to solve my immediate problems with money left over. But as I looked at the bills, I realized I was already thinking about next time. About whether I could replicate this success. About what I might accomplish with a larger starting bankroll and better preparation. The money felt like proof that I'd found something sustainable. A way to use my professional knowledge for personal benefit. A solution to financial problems that didn't depend on anyone else or require years of gradual saving. I put 1,800 in an envelope, marked car repair, and 400 in another envelope marked rent. The remaining 150 I kept separate, telling myself it was recreational money. Money I could afford to lose. But deep down, I knew it was seed money for my next session. Friday morning came with a hangover I couldn't blame on alcohol. My head felt fuzzy, my eyes dry from staring at cards for 8 hours, my hands shaky from too much caffeine and adrenaline. I'd slept maybe 4 hours, waking up repeatedly to check that the money was still on my kitchen counterpoint. $1,950. It looked smaller in daylight somehow, more ordinary. Just paper and ink, not the life-changing windfall it had felt like in the casino. I showered and drove to Martinez Auto Repair, the Honda's transmission protesting every gear change. Eddie was under the hood of a Ford pickup when I arrived, but he came out wiping his hands when he saw me. Thomas, good timing. I was about to call you about the estimate. I want to move forward with the repair. Eddie's eyebrows went up. You found the money? I did. Great. How do you want to handle payment? I can still do the installment plan if I'll pay cash. The full amount. Now Eddie looked surprised. Cash? The whole 1,800. I pulled the envelope from my jacket pocket and counted out 18 $50 bills on his workbench. The money felt different leaving my hands than it had sitting on my table. More real, more permanent. Where the hell did you get this kind of cash? Eddie asked, then immediately held up his hand. Sorry, none of my business. Just surprised, you know. I had a good night. Eddie started the paperwork while I tried not to think about what a good night actually meant. 18 hours ago, this money had been part of my rent payment. Now it was solving a different crisis entirely, which felt like progress even though I wasn't sure the math worked out that way. I can have the car ready by Monday afternoon, Eddie said. You'll need alternate transportation over the weekend. I nodded and signed the work order. Walking home, I felt the lightness that comes with solving a major problem, but also a strange emptiness. The money was gone, converted back into practical necessity. The brief period when I'd been rich, or at least comfortable, was over. To at home, I called Mr. Chun to arrange rent payment. Mr. Hensley, good to hear from you. Do you have the rent situation figured out? Yes, sir. I can bring you the full amount this afternoon. Excellent. I have to admit, I was concerned. But I'm glad you worked it out. I met Mr. Chun at his office at 3 p.m. and handed him 8 $50 bills plus smaller denominations for the exact amount. He counted the money twice, then filled out a receipt. This is quite a bit of cash. Mr. Hensley, I had some savings I forgot about. He nodded politely, but I could see him processing the explanation. People don't usually forget about $850 in savings, especially people who need extensions on their rent. Well, regardless, I'm glad everything worked out. Your lease runs through August, and I hope we won't have any more difficulties. No, sir. Everything should be smooth from here. Walking back to my apartment, I felt the satisfaction of crisis averted. Both major problems solved with one successful gambling session. No begging family for loans, no missed payments, no eviction notices. Just applied mathematics and professional discipline. But I also felt the peculiar deflation that comes after adrenaline fades. Yesterday at this time, I'd been sitting at a blackjack table with nearly $2,000 in chips, feeling like I'd discovered a secret the rest of the world didn't know. Now I was back to being a night shift casino dealer with $63 in his savings account. An MY phone rang as I climbed the stairs to my apartment. Rebecca, finally returning my call from earlier in the week. Hey, Thomas. Sorry I missed you. Crazy few days at work. What's going on? Nothing urgent. Just wanted to check in. Are you okay? You sounded stressed in your message. I considered telling her about the rent crisis, the car repair, the gambling session that had solved both problems. But explaining would require admitting how close I'd come to real financial disaster, and the win would sound too good to be true. I'm fine. Had some car trouble, but I got it sorted out. That's expensive. Do you need help with the repair? No, I handled it. Thanks, though. There was a pause. Rebecca knew me well enough to hear the things I wasn't saying. Thomas, are you sure you're okay? You sound different. I'm just tired. Long week at work. Okay. Well, call me if you need anything. And maybe we can catch up properly next weekend. Sounds good. Love you. Love you too. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and looked around the apartment. Same beige walls, same cheap furniture. Same feeling of living paycheck to paycheck despite having just solved two major crises. The $150 I'd kept as recreational money sat on my coffee table. Three $20 bills, five tens, two 20s, and a 10. Seed money for the next time I needed to solve a problem quickly, because there would be a next time. There always was. Monday afternoon, I picked up my Honda from Martinez Auto. The transmission felt smooth and solid, shifting through gears without the grinding noise that had become my constant companion. Eddie had done good work, and $1,800 suddenly felt like money well spent. She should run another 100,000 miles easy, he said, handing me the keys. Just keep up with the fluid changes, and you'll be fine. Driving home, I felt the satisfaction that comes with a problem genuinely solved. Not patched or delayed, but fixed properly with professional service and quality parts. This was what money was supposed to do: solve problems, create security, buy peace of mind. But the satisfaction came with an edge of restlessness I couldn't quite identify. I'd proven something important to myself over the weekend: that my professional knowledge could be converted into personal financial gain. The question was whether to treat it as a one-time emergency measure or develop it into something more systematic. That evening, I went to work with a different perspective on my job. Instead of just dealing cards mechanically, I found myself studying the players more carefully, watching their betting patterns, their strategy decisions, their emotional reactions to wins and losses. Misses. Chun was at her usual table 14, playing her methodical system. Two hands at once, always $50 each, perfect basic strategy with no deviation. Over 3 hours, I watched her win about $200 through steady, disciplined played. At table 12, a group of younger guys was celebrating someone's birthday with increasingly reckless bets. They'd started with reasonable $25 hands, but had escalated to hundreds as the alcohol flowed. By midnight, they'd lost over $3,000 collectively and were getting loud. Enough to attract pit boss attention. The contrast was instructive. Mrs. Chun treated gambling like a business. Transaction, controlled, systematic, profitable over time. The birthday group treated it like entertainment: emotional, impulsive, expensive entertainment that I knew which approach I wanted to emulate. During my break, I sat in the employee cafeteria and did some calculations. If I could replicate Friday's success once a month, I could generate an extra $2,000 in income annually. Not life-changing money, but significant enough to build a real emergency fund, pay off credit cards, maybe even start saving for something beyond mere survival. The key was treating it professionally. Set aside specific amounts at specific intervals. Apply perfect strategy without emotional deviation. Walk away at predetermined win targets or loss limits. Janet stopped by my table during the break. "How are you feeling, Thomas?" "Fine." "What?" Friday was concerning. 8 hours of gambling after a full shift isn't healthy. It was a one-time thing. I had some financial pressure, and I worked it out. Janet studied my face with the expression of someone who'd seen this conversation before. "Thomas, I've been managing dealers for 12 years. I've seen good people develop problems with gambling. It usually starts exactly like this, using their professional knowledge to solve personal financial issues. I'm not developing a problem. I won money. I solved my problems. I'm done. Are you?" The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to say yes, to convince both of us that Friday had been an isolated incident. But the $150 on my coffee table suggested otherwise. "I'm being smart about it," I said finally. Smart would be not gambling at all. You know the math better than anyone. The house always wins eventually. The house wins against typical players. I'm not a typical player. Janet sighed. "That's what they all say, Thomas. The smart ones, the ones who know the games inside and out. They think their knowledge makes them immune to the same psychological factors that affect everyone else. Doesn't it? No. It makes them more dangerous to themselves, because they can rationalize bigger risks." The conversation ended there, but her words stayed with me for the rest of my shift. I dealt cards mechanically while thinking about risk and rationalization, about the difference between knowledge and wisdom. By 6 a.m., I convinced myself that Janet was being overly cautious. Friday hadn't been reckless gambling. It had been applied mathematics under pressure. Emergency financial engineering that had worked exactly as intended. Walking through the casino toward the employee exit, I passed the same ATM where I'd withdrawn my rent money 3 days earlier. My reflection stared back from the dark screen, and for a moment I saw myself from Janet's perspective, a young dealer walking past gambling tables after an 8-hour shift, thinking about money and odds and the next opportunity to test his theories. But I also saw myself from my own perspective, someone who discovered a skill that could supplement his income, solve problems, create opportunities that wouldn't otherwise exist that I in the parking lot. I sat in my smoothly running Honda and checked my bank balance on my phone. The checking account showed $63.47, exactly what it had shown a week ago, before the crisis and the solution in the return to normalcy. But I had $150 in cash at home. Seed money, investment capital, a small stake that could become something larger with the right application of skill and discipline. The casino's neon sign reflected in my windshield as I started the engine, still flickering even as dawn broke over the empty parking lot, still promising possibilities to anyone willing to risk something to gain something else. That I drove home thinking about the next time I might need quick money, and how much easier it would be now that I knew it was possible. 2 weeks passed before I touched the $150. 2 weeks of normal shifts, normal bills, normal life. But normal felt different now. Every small expense, gas, groceries, a beer after work, felt significant in a way it hadn't before. I tasted what it felt like to have real money, to solve problems instantly instead of juggling them for months. Rebecca called on a Wednesday evening. "Thomas, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me." My stomach clenched. "What's up?" "Do you remember lending me $300 last month?" I remembered asking her for $300, not lending it. "What do you mean? You said you'd paid me back, but I don't have any record of it. No deposit, no cash, nothing." The lie came out automatically. "I gave you cash when I saw you at Mom's birthday." "Thomas, Mom's birthday was 6 months ago, and you didn't give me any money." Silence stretched between us. I could hear her disappointment through the phone. "Are you using again?" "Using what?" "Whatever you were using in college." "Pills, drinking, I don't know." "Something's wrong." "Rebecca, I'm fine. There's some confusion about the money, but there's no confusion. You owe me $300, and now you're lying about paying it back." "I'll get you the money." "It's not about the money anymore, Thomas. It's about you lying to my face." She hung up. I stared at my phone, feeling the weight of disappointment from someone whose opinion actually mattered to me. The $150 suddenly felt like a solution again. Thursday night's shift felt endless. Every hand I dealt reminded me of my own success. Every win by a player felt like money I could have won instead. Mrs. Chun was at her usual table, methodically building her stack through perfect basic strategy. By midnight, she was up $400. More than enough to pay Rebecca back and prove I wasn't the irresponsible person she thought I was. During my break, I calculated odds in my head. My 150 could become 300 with one good session. 300 could become 600. 600 could solve the Rebecca problem and leave me with extra money for the next crisis. Marcus Webb showed up around 2 a.m., the construction contractor who'd inspired my first session. He sat at table 12 with $500 and began the same disciplined approach that had worked so well before. That I watched him win steadily for 90 minutes, applying perfect strategy without deviation. He colored up with $850, tipped me $20, and walked away satisfied. "Clean session," he said. "Know when to quit, and the game treats you right." I nodded like I was just being polite, but I was taking notes. Marcus had turned 500 into 850 in 90 minutes. Professional, controlled, profitable. The mathematics were compelling. I had knowledge, experience, and a proven track record of success. What I needed was the discipline to apply them systematically. My shift ended at 6 a.m. Walking through the casino toward the employee exit, I felt the familiar pull of possibility. The early morning crowd was thin, the atmosphere intimate and promising. That I passed the low-limit tables where I'd started my first session. Table 7 was open with Maria dealing to one sleepy player. The same table where I'd turned $20 into 80. Then built that into nearly 2,000. The $150 in my wallet felt like seed money waiting to grow. The ATM felt familiar this time. Not terrifying like the first occasion, but comfortable. Routine. I withdrew $140, leaving 10 and checking for emergencies, and walked to table 7 where Maria was shuffling cards. Morning, Thomas. Back for more. Just a quick session. I bought in for $40, keeping the rest in reserve. Conservative bankroll management, exactly like the professionals did. Small bets, perfect strategy, gradual building toward a reasonable target. The first hour went perfectly. Basic strategy worked exactly as it should, and I built my $40 into $120. Not spectacular, but steady and controlled that I increased my bets to $10 per hand. The card stayed friendly for another 30 minutes. Queen Jack against Dealer 6. Ace 9 against Dealer 4. Blackjack that paid $15 instantly. By 7:30, I was up $160 total. $160 would cover most of what I owed Rebecca. Close enough to demonstrate good faith and rebuild her trust in me, but 160 wasn't quite enough. I needed to get to 200 to feel comfortable, maybe 250 to have breathing room for other expenses. That I moved to a $25 minimum table. The transition felt natural rather than reckless. I was applying proper bankroll management, betting a reasonable percentage of my current winnings. The higher limits would help me reach my target more efficiently. First hand at the new table, Jack 8 versus Dealer 9. 18 against 9, a close decision, but basic strategy said to stand. I stood and won when she busted with $23,210 total. Enough to pay Rebecca back completely. I should have colored up and walked away victorious. Instead, I thought about the extra $50 I could win with one more good hand. $50 that would give me cushion for the next unexpected expense. That I pushed out another $25. The $25 hand lost. King 6 versus Dealer Ace, and she had blackjack. $25 gone instantly, but I was still up $185. Still enough for Rebecca, still a successful session. Next hand, another $25. I was committed to this level now, and one loss didn't change the mathematical reality that I was playing with superior knowledge. 9-7 versus Dealer 8. 16 against 8. Basic strategy said to hit. I tapped the table and drew a queen for 26. Bust, down to 160. Still profitable, but moving in the wrong direction. The familiar tightness returned to my chest. I was supposed to be building winnings, not chasing losses. This was supposed to be controlled gambling, not emotional recovery of money that had never really been mine to begin with. I increased to $50 per hand. The logic felt sound. If I was going to experience variance anyway, better to push through it at higher stakes and recover my losses more quickly. A few good hands would put me back where I'd been. Ace 5 versus Dealer 10. Soft 16 against 10, basic strategy said to hit. I drew a 6 for 22. Bust, down to 110. The session was deteriorating rapidly, and panic was starting to influence my decisions. Queen versus Dealer 6. 20 against a bust card, the strongest possible hand against a weak dealer card. Basic strategy said to stand, which felt safe and logical. The dealer flipped a 10 for 16, then drew a 5 for $21.50 gone. I was down to $60, barely above my original buy-in. The woman beside me watched with concern. Maybe take a break? She suggested. I thanked her but pressed on. $60 left, my last shot. All in. The dealer gave me 10-6 against her 9. 16, the same hand that had started my downfall. Strategy said hit. I tapped. 4 of hearts. 20. She turned over 19. I won. $120. Enough to pay part of what I owed Rebecca. I should have left, but the near miss made me feel invincible. I stayed. Ace King. Blackjack, plus 75. Jack 9 against Dealer 5. 19, but she hit to 21. My winnings slipped. I raised my bets, chasing the losses. The tension mounted. An 11 against a Dealer 10 begged for a double, but my bankroll was too small. I hit instead, King for 21. $220. Finally, I walked away. At home, I set aside $200 in an envelope marked Rebecca. I lied when I called her, claiming overtime had covered the debt. She saw through it. Thomas, are you gambling? She asked. I denied it, mailed her the cash, and kept 20 for myself. Back at work, dealing cards, I noticed players' mistakes differently. Mrs. Chun lost steadily despite sound strategy. I wanted to tell her variance was temporary, but dealers don't give advice. A text from Rebecca came. Got the money. Thank you. We need to talk soon. The next morning, I sat with my last 20. Maria dealt. Slowly, I built it to 90, then moved up to higher stakes. Within hours, I had 230, enough for groceries, maybe a bill. I should have left, but I pressed on. At a $50 table, luck turned. Losses mounted. I shoved in my last 55, 16 against a dealer king. I hit 5 of clubs, 21, 110. Survival, not victory. At home, I stashed the cash. My bankroll was growing, or so I told myself. 6 months later, I drive from the casino to a studio I rent by the week. For months, I slept in my Camry. My supervisor eventually found me a place. $350 a week buys me 4 walls and a hot plate. No questions asked. I still deal blackjack 5 nights a week. Same hands, same math. But now I see the truth in every player's face. Knowing the odds doesn't protect you from chasing losses. The house edge isn't just math. It's psychological, relentless. Rebecca and I talk monthly, careful not to mention money or lies. She knows what happened anyway. The rent money that became chips. The chips that vanished in a morning of perfect strategy undone by variance that I haven't placed a bet since. Still, dealing cards reminds me every night that I'm one decision away from sliding back. Pulling into my apartment lot, the casino's neon flickers in my rearview. It still whispers promises. But tonight, I count my tips, $43 in ones and fives. Money earned, not gambled. That it's a start.